He ain't so gloomy.
Yeah.
He comes from a very dark beginning, but you don't keep doing something for that long, and because you're depressed.
It's hard to explain exactly what's wrong with Tom King's 83rd issue of Batman. You know when you're visiting the doctor and there's that one guy in the corner, and you can just see by the look on his face, he's in constant state of pain and discomfort? That's the experience I had reading Batman 83. Reading Tom King's Batman is like having a terminal illness and just waiting, hoping for relief. I know that sounds harsh, but that's honestly what the experience has devolved into. 20 minutes of pain and discomfort via terrible writing tropes, thoughtless characterization, and a huge helping of King's own self-indulgence every other week. At least that's the way it is for me. This week, King tries to reframe Alfred's death into one of his worst story themes, the heroic suicide. I don't mind getting personal, but I don't like getting too personal on the channel. But I grew up in a household touched by mental illness. During my 20 plus years in the service, I led a lot of young men and women away from their families for the first time. I personally have been impacted by enough suicide attempts to last multiple lifetimes. And I will tell anyone who's willing to listen, there is no such thing as a heroic suicide. Suicide is one of the most painful experiences you can put anyone through. There's nothing heroic by the act. I feel for anyone experiencing suicidal thoughts. My heart goes out to them and their families. They're all in my thoughts and prayers. I truly hope anyone experiencing suicidal ideations gets the help they need to recover. Suicide is the worst thing I can think of. It's not heroic. And I'm not trying to disparage anyone who has experienced suicide attempts and have a different point of view from me, but in my experience, suicide is an extremely cowardly way out. It's not romantic. It helps nobody. Suicide destroys families and lives long after the act. And for King to project his romantic notion of the heroic suicide on Alfred is quite frankly unforgivable. It makes me sick to my stomach, and it doesn't make sense given the scenario or characters involved, which I'll cover more in depth when I get to that portion of the review. He also attempts to use Alfred's voice from beyond the grave to try and reframe some of his more controversial Batman story choices, which I also dislike very much. This is another terrible Batman comic. With that, let's get into all the details in today's comic book review. I'm not really going to walk through the entire plot in my reviews anymore. I'm going to highlight the moments that feel important and give a general idea what the plot is about. There are plenty of people giving comic book play-by-play, and I want to put more effort into expanding on my opinions on the story and art craft in each comic. With that being said, Batman 83 is basically one long scene of Batman reacting to Alfred's death, so it's probably going to feel like I'm walking through the comic sequentially, but it's just because of the way Tom King executed this particular comic. First things first, this story is being released far too late to fully impact Batman readers. Bane murdered Alfred 3 months ago. Far too much time passed between that event and this comic, which depicts Bruce's reaction to Alfred's death. Batman 83 is also extremely decompressed, which probably wouldn't be an issue if Tom King's Batman run wasn't plagued by decompressed and filler comics. He's gone to that well far too often. Generally speaking, I loathe King's use of poetry and classic literature in Batman. He's used a storytelling device far too often, and it became grating. Batman 83 starts out with Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem, The Children's Hour, which actually fits the story. We learn it's the poem Alfred recited to Thomas Wayne when he learned Martha was pregnant with Bruce. It's actually a nice beginning to what becomes an extremely long-winded goodbye letter, or possibly an audio recording from Alfred to Bruce. The heartbreak and distress on Bruce's face is very evident when he realizes his surrogate father is dead when he wakes up. In fact, this is the best Mikel Janin art in a Batman comic probably in all of 2019. He really appeared to check out on the series like a lot of readers several months back. But Janin's definitely on top of his game here. He does a great job illustrating this story. The next scene I want to talk about is when Bruce gathers Alfred's body and sees "You're Not Batman" painted on the wall. We learn here Alfred was watching Bruce from the shadows when he took his vow to fight criminals that's introduced in Batman number 12. The problem here is that we also know from that issue, before a 10-year-old Bruce makes his vow, he attempts suicide with a razor blade. This means Alfred watched a 10-year-old Bruce, who he loves more than anything in the world, attempt suicide and didn't intervene. I don't believe for a second Alfred would have watched this moment without trying to save his adopted son. It isn't in the nature of his character, and there's nothing Tom King or anyone can say to make me believe otherwise. This is King either forgetting the scene he crafted in Batman number 12 or further trying to romanticize suicide, which I've already expressed my feelings about. Alfred also talks about Selina leaving Bruce at the altar. That day, on the roof, as we waited for her, there you were in your suit and tie, and for the first time since that room, since that candle, once again referencing 10-year-old Bruce's suicide attempt and taking his vow to fight criminals here, I was not looking at the Batman, I was not even looking at the child I once knew. You were so handsome. And then King tries to use Alfred's voice from beyond the grave to reframe Batman 50. Alfred writes or states, I'm honestly not sure which, in the past whenever a narration is derived from written words is presented in cursive, so it's probably an audio recording, he says, you were the man I always knew you'd become. What? When this happens in Batman 50, Bruce imagines jumping off the roof and killing himself. The entire event basically drives Bruce insane and is the catalyst that leads to Bane taking over Gotham. Why would Alfred always imagine his son being a broken man who failed his city? I can't be the only one who sees this, right? And then we get to the part where King reframes Alfred's death into a suicide. Alfred explains he sent the signal that he had escaped and ran. It turns out it was a lie. He says, I expect now that Thomas will kill me, and so you must ask, why the lie? The answer is as you might expect. I am again putting my ideals above my current need. I choose not to be an instrument of your downfall, but a cause of your salvation. I will die here. I choose to die here. And we basically learn we aren't just reading or listening to Alfred's goodbye to Bruce. This is actually a suicide note. Alfred has been by Bruce's side since the very beginning. He's seen Bruce vanquish every obstacle in front of him. Why would he doubt his son now? If Alfred doesn't believe in Bruce as a hero, why should any other member of the Bat family believe in him? Why should the Justice League believe in him? Why should readers believe in Batman? If there's one character in the entire DC universe that would believe Bruce would find a way to win, even if the deck looked so stacked against him it was against all hope, it's Alfred. Yet I'm supposed to believe his father, the man who's witnessed Bruce perform heroic miracles on too many occasions to count, gave up hope in the Batman. That's the saddest thing about Alfred's death in this entire story. Tom King decided Alfred, the one person who loves Bruce more than anyone, no longer believed in the heroic nature of his son. I could actually go on about a dozen other reasons why Alfred, even considering this, is not only against his character traits in history, but exceptionally illogical based on King's own story. But I've already made my point very well. This is why Tom King's entire Batman run is a gigantic failure. It's his fundamental misunderstanding of, or need to change, all the characters into bastardized versions that go against 80 years of established character history. Remember how I said King went to the poetry and classic literature well so often it became grating? Of course, he has to overuse the storytelling device here as well. Before Bruce confronts his not-father Thomas Wayne, Alfred recites another Longfellow poem, The Reaper and the Flower. Sure, it fits the scene, but King already filled 2 other pages full of poetry earlier in the book. The man does not understand that a teaspoon of vinegar goes a long way. He always overdoes it with everything. That's why every narrative device he uses feels self-absorbed and pretentious. Stop trying to appear smart, Tom King. You're not the only one who had to read poetry in the 7th grade. In the final page, Bruce is led to Thomas Wayne, who's flanked by the ventriloquist and Psycho Pirate. Now, I've been saying this for months. Flashpoint Batman isn't even supposed to exist anymore. His dimension is destroyed, and he's certainly never been portrayed as the fighting machine Tom King makes him out to be. So King's decided the second to last issue is the time to clear all this up and explain exactly how Flashpoint Batman got here and why he's so powerful. Some might say better late than never, but in my opinion, JoJo said it best.
Get out right now, it's the end of you and me. It's too late and I can't wait for you to be gone.
I do want to mention before I wrap this up, I have a Tom King related video going live tomorrow evening after Outside the Bleed. I talked to independent comic writer Larry Bernard about King's misuse of literary trauma theory and how it's basically destroyed his entire Batman run. I personally learned a lot from the conversation, and hopefully you will as well. Batman 83 could have been a well-executed, impactful comic book. Unfortunately, Tom King wasted the best Batman work artist Mikel Janin has done in a very long time. He once again overuses poetry as a narrative tool. It also doesn't help that Alfred died in the pages of Batman 3 months ago. But his most egregious errors are romanticizing suicide and forgoing 80 years of character history, giving Alfred the worst death I could ever imagine for the character, no longer believing in the heroic nature of his son, no longer believing that Batman could save him. Tom King has made a ton of unforgivable errors in his Batman run, but in my opinion, this is the worst, bar none. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.